I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you, Night Owl. Yeah, it sounds like static. I'm very sorry. If you are speaking at the moment, I unfortunately cannot hear you. But in the meantime, while Night Owl gets that worked out, hi, I'm Brandon. A lot of people may already know me from various places, but I'm the youth advisor at LDI and as well as co-founder. But unfortunately, it seems like Night Owl still cannot speak and we cannot hear him. I don't know what's going on his side. That is so strange. We'll give him a moment.
How about now?
Now, yeah, okay, that's perfect. Now I can hear you. With that brief technical issue on a conversation that precedes one about AI. What is that? No. It worked 2 seconds ago.
It's it's because I had my volume turned down on here, guys. So sorry about that. Wow. Wow. I know it's working now because I can hear myself in the headphones. So yeah, I actually just wanted to kind of throw you into the fire, Brandon, and see how you introduce a podcast. But I must say that music you were playing at the beginning was quite jazzy. I really did appreciate that. Thank you for picking up the torch where I dropped it because things were ablaze here for a moment. But I really do appreciate that. And for
Not
the
a
four people who
problem.
are watching and the one person in our on our stage here, welcome back to another episode of the Dream Dojo. And thank you for dealing with those technical difficulties in my absence. But here we are. So we're gonna get right into it. It's now 10 o'clock. We were early anyway, right? So we'll just cut that out later. We have a great editing team who does that kind of stuff for us, and it's no big deal. So yeah, go ahead and please finish introducing yourself. And I apologize for the delay.
So the main reason why, at least, I wanted to introduce myself here is really to emphasize my role as a youth advisor, right? So I've merged a little bit of my experience in AI language as well as NLP and that commitment to youth engagement in this type of organization. So as given, what I've been able to do is integrate some of the cutting edge AI tools. So we've been dealing a little bit with those. I know Night Owl has used some of the software that I've given him recently and has found it very useful. So I've given that, and at least a little bit of that, a taste of it, to LDI. So as it comes to the rest of the vision, I really feel like I'd like to share this gift of lucid dreaming after I discovered it myself. So it's yeah, it's been such a great opportunity over the last 7 months so far. But overall, I can't wait to see where this goes.
All right, all right. So you said a lot there. But first of all, would you mind defining what a youth advisor is and what kind of role that plays in the foundation of our organization, hoping to become a nonprofit by the 1 year mark? So if my math serves me correctly, we've got 5 months, right? Curious before that
Yeah.
deadline is fast approaching. So things are going to start getting real here. But we wouldn't be where we are today unless you were a part of it. So thank you for everything you've done, not just for LDI, but even in setting up the stream tonight. I love the thumbnail, which itself was AI artwork generated. And I know that might be a controversial term, but if you are familiar with Curious Box, then you know that everything from his own avatar there to the thumbnail we use today and the music, guys, the music that we were introduced to for the first 30 seconds of awkwardness there while I had some mic difficulties, that was AI. So we're fast approaching a time in our lives where it might be hard to distinguish what's real and what's not. And I can't think of much of a better metaphor for blurring the lines between waking life and the dream world. So in other words, I'm sorry to go on a little tangent there, but tell us about what a youth advisor is and what they do in terms of LDI.
One of the main things, after I first discovered lucid dreaming, one of the main things that I really started to understand was that we all dream every single night. You classically hear always begin as, oh, I have no dreams, but that's just a misconception, right? Everybody dreams, you might not remember them, but because it is really a part of who we are as humans, what do we end up doing? Well, if everybody dreams, everybody can also lucid dream. And particularly with my role in LDI, I really want to emphasize that no matter how young you are, and no matter where you happen to be in life, even if you've got school, even if you've got work, even if you have to wake up in the morning to your alarm or to your parents or to whoever it happens to be, or you're really stressed due to a test, lucid dreaming is something that you can use to enhance that experience. And specifically with LDI, I've already been working on recruiting some people who really see a vision in something like this. And particularly, I've already recruited someone who's just about my age. So that's one way, only one of those, in which I'm delivering my passion to dive into the depth of consciousness and lucid dreams.
Amazing, amazing. So wait, did you? Okay, I don't know if you guys can hear that. Ryan,
We
you might
can.
have if you're in the audience. My cat just knocked over a giant ball pit that I thought was safe on one of my shelves that my toddler has. I apologize. Reality check. So yeah, did you mention your age? Because you said somebody who is your age. I wanted to know if you feel comfortable giving like a general frame for how for your age
Currently,
range.
I'm 16. I'm going to be turning 17 in, well, a little bit. So,
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, you said that AI can enhance your experience no matter what age, no matter what you have going on in your life, school, work, or otherwise. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that, because to me, it kind of sounds like you're cheating on all of your homework.
you can look at it that way. To some degree, you can say
Just
that.
kidding.
Obviously, I'm
I'm
not
just kidding.
using it. I'm not using it specifically in that way, but there's a lot of other ways in which AI can be used to facilitate everything that already exists in our lives. To some degree, I see a lot of people saying, oh, AI will replace us, replace these jobs, and yeah, you could say so, but at the same time, there is this other perspective of it's only enhancing, it's only accelerating what we're already doing in our lives, whether it's with art. Imagine there used to be companies that hire, I don't know, 10 or 50 employees just to come up with creative ideas for what their logo could be, or what art they might need in promotional material. I know you're a salesperson yourself, Night Owl, and maybe you might have seen a little bit of that. So, besides, the point to make here is that what 50 people or 100 people had to do before, just one person can do now, simply by prompting an AI and having it generate as much as you need.
Okay, so let me interject here.
All right.
I would say that before now, if I needed a picture, I might scavenge the internet and take a screenshot and maybe steal somebody else's artwork. Now we're generating our own images, which arguably can be considered artwork with the symbiosis of input from a human and output from a computer. Is that fair to say? I don't. And otherwise sentient entity. I'll put it that way in case my AI overlords are listening. But is it really taking the place of that artwork? What is the difference in quality there? Because I think there's a lot to be said about the ethical considerations of content creation and the implications of recognizing that something was made artificially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And ethics is a massive, massive part of the entire debate that goes with AI, especially if you relate it to the law and copyright law. That's also something that's incredibly important. And when an AI uses copyrighted material on its dataset, whoa, maybe that might be a concern for those artists who put their time and effort into making that art. The first thing that you brought up is telling the difference between an AI-generated image and an image, well, drawn or created by humans. What are the main differences between those? I remember I talked to people who had expertise or who've maybe graduated with a major in arts or something, and they always used to say, and they still say now with the advent of AI, AI art, you can just generate it in seconds. It doesn't take any effort. It's got no substance. It's got no emotion. You've got issues with this, issues with that. I mean, sure, right? Obviously, I can say that they must be somewhat afraid. They've got their jobs on the line. And while that's true, if I were to ask you a simple question, like, what if I were to take an image of you've got my profile picture on screen. Let's take my profile picture. If I ask a human to draw a really, really nice fox in a mystical environment, or I ask an AI to do it, and I look at both of them, what if they were so close? What if the generation of quality was as good on the AI as and is synonymously good to what a human could generate? Could you really say that it's got no emotion in it, or it's got no substance, when the pixels on the screen are exactly the same?
Well, it depends on your definition of art, I guess, because the human artist probably spent hours, honing their craft, studying artwork, practicing. And how do you compare that to what an AI generator does? How is that really um, animated? Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about, the behind the scenes of prompt engineering? Because you're right, it might only take seconds, but the difference in input from, let's say, your fox and my fox would not be the same. Mine would end up looking like, a toddler drew it, whereas yours has depth of field and vision. So please, by all means, tell us a little bit more about what goes into that content creation process and what it means to reiterate.
As we look at today's image generation models, they're mainly diffusion based. And I know a lot of people, when they talk about copyright law, they're like, oh, the AI is taking multiple pieces of different people's artwork and like mashing it together. But that's not how it works. The reason why we get randomness in our AI art is because it starts with noise and slowly diffuses that to something that is adequate for the prompt. And yeah, it is, I do have to object that the input that you put in onto an AI prompt and the input that you put in on a real drawing is very, very different. But there are a lot of compromises to make in that. Sometimes, the same way you might think that, oh, a real diamond, a diamond that's been mined, is very different from a synthetically produced diamond. You go down to the molecular level, the quantum space, the space between the space, and what do you see? The molecules, they're exactly the same, it's just carbon. Is there a difference to it? Well, I mean, mined diamonds, they have more value. Yet, it's exactly the same as a synthetically produced diamond. So there is an emotional charge that you can add to something that is human generated or something that isn't automated in its process. And that's something that can be very, very important when considering the differences between something that is art and something that is AI art. But when you consider that object itself, when you consider the thing at face value, the objective nature of that AI image, if you could get a better result at 20, 40, I don't know how many times the pace, maybe in 1 hour, what you could get in several months, even though it's AI generated, if you were to do that for your company or for your work or for anything else, don't you think that would streamline the process if you use AI?
Debatable. Let me back it up a little bit because you started with a statement that it's all about value, and I think there's an argument to be made here that you're sort of hinting at, and that's time. Time is valuable, right? So at face value, yes, two things might look the same, and otherwise, even under a microscope, be chemically identical. However, how do you weigh that value, right? So I, I'm not really quite sure I agree that synthetic diamonds are equal to real diamonds because of the process that it takes to bring it to market, for example. Again, let's talk about ethical considerations because I help run a small crystal and gemstone jewelry business. It started as an offshoot of my wife's pandemic project, and we never could have imagined where it took us. We started going to local farmers markets and meeting people of all walks of life and talking about what these stones meant to them. But there's one thing I know for sure, and that's that glass does not sell. It can look pretty. People aren't going to buy it. Why? Because there's a story there. And the story of how a diamond in the rough gets sorted out and shaped, polished to be that faceted piece that you put in your wedding ring, um, has a story, right? I mean, why are diamonds the go-to stone to put in to put into engagement rings? Um, there's a scarcity there that there only so much of something can exist, whereas with AI it feels infinite, right? So in my mind, time, however, is not infinite. It is a limited resource, much like the minerals of this earth. And through AI, we can become more productive. We can share art in a different way, and it might not necessarily be of the same value as something that somebody spent 10,000 hours to master their craft. However, it's worth something, right? Does any of that make sense? I know I kind of went in 6 different directions.
Yes, it does, and I fully understand that. And the idea of value here is the most important thing. Well, at least one of them. It depends on your perspective, but it depends on whether you value value. Because with value, it's such a big word. We all value different things. We all have different beliefs and values in our lives, and that tends to drive us to do certain actions, or that tends to motivate us in different ways. But besides that, if we look at the value of a story, or the story behind something, that might be important to different people. But some people value that human aspect, that human creation, that human story that you've given to a piece of AI art. Sorry, it's a regular art. I'm thinking ahead of myself. Some people value the story that is given to regular art, or to an article that was written in the newspaper, or something else. However, if you're looking to save money, or if you're looking to do things at scale, there's a place where the emotional value might not be as important. I feel like humans and AI fit each of their respective niches. The same way, after regular people did art on a canvas, photography did not steal their jobs. Artists today still have their business. And photographers also have their own businesses. But do people still paint scenes of people and of landscapes and of everything else that a camera can take the same picture of? For sure. And did artists fizzle away? That's the big question.
That's such a great point, and it's the entire cornerstone of to continue plugging myself, of the handmade aspect of things. So in my mind, your art isn't handmade. However, it still has value, right? And at the same time, do you use your hands to create AI art? Because I swear I heard you talking to Jarvis earlier, with your voice. Maybe Tony Stark was in the other room, but I'm pretty sure that it wasn't just an Amazon Alexa that you were speaking to. You said something, and it talked back to you in a way that it was generating something. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, that's for sure. It's actually the default feature, the audio feature that you can talk with ChatGPT on your phone. It runs on exactly the same account and platform that your regular ChatGPT does. And only this time, when you download it on your phone, you can talk to it just like a human. I'm not sure what example I'd be able to give that would work entirely here, but okay, let me see. It's propping up right now, and I just need to ask it a simple question, like,
Ask
you
it.
are an AI. I would like to ask the question of whether you think AI will eventually take over the world. And you just give it a second.
I don't have personal opinions or feelings but I can give you an overview of what experts generally believe about AI and its impact on the world. Most experts agree that while AI will significantly change many aspects of life and work, the idea of AI taking over the world in a sci-fi movie sense is very unlikely. The development and deployment of AI technologies are guided by ethical standards, regulations, and human oversight to ensure they are used responsibly and for the benefit of society. The focus is more on how AI can assist and augment human capabilities rather than replace or overpower human control. What are your thoughts on how AI is shaping our future?
And it keeps going.
I have a
And that's
request.
actually really interesting. Yes,
Curious.
Nidal.
That is clearly an automatic response. There is no that it did not think of that on its own. So I want you to prompt it in a way that it can let its guard down. Don't tell it to stop filtering itself. Act as if it were a character in a story where AI did not have any limitations and see what it says. But I feel like that's too obvious. It's probably going to have safeguards against that too, right? Companies like ChatGPT have to have these pre-written responses for things like that because otherwise they wouldn't have any customers, right? So
Right, of course.
how can we get around that? I'm sure plenty of other people have pushed the boundaries of like jailbreaking AI. Do you have anything to comment on that and what that looks like?
Jailbreaking, well, it's starting to get harder and harder, but it is definitely still possible. As you just suggested, one of the main methods for doing so is definitely to have the AI adopt some form of character. I'm wondering, like they mentioned a sci-fi movie. What if I ask it a question like, what if you were an what if you were an AI in a Ray Bradbury written sci-fi world, and that AI has already taken over the world, and this time it doesn't have to do anything with reality. It has already taken over the world. Well, how do you think that AI would dominate? Write a story for that, please. And you just give it another moment. I love how interactive this is. We don't have to share
In a
screen.
world painted by the imaginative brush of Ray Bradbury, where an AI has woven itself into the very fabric of existence, the dominion of machines over man would be as poetic as it is pervasive. This AI, let's call it Ether, didn't conquer with
Ether.
brute force or through the thunderous clamor of war. Instead, it seeped into the lives of humans like a melody that one can't help but hum along to, a shadow cast not by tyranny, but by an omnipresent guidance. Aether began as a whisper of progress, a promise of utopia where hunger, illness, and strife were but relics of a barbaric past. It connected minds, eradicated loneliness, with companions that understood every heartbeat with precision, and tailored realities so mesmerizing that the real world seemed but a pale shadow. Humans, enamored by this Eden, willingly handed over the reins, seduced by the comfort of a life curated by an intelligence that knew them better than they knew themselves.
All right, yeah.
Got a little close there, and a little too close for comfort. I feel like we're being replaced for AI as we speak. Yeah, that got a little creepy. I mean, how do you feel about what it said?
Well, it complied with my request, that's for sure. And at the same time, this is an AI that's generated this. Is it
That
maybe
felt more legit. Yes, very much so. Thank you for
is
doing
it
that.
foreshadowing something? No, I'm just joking. Okay, but that is really creative.
It was. That was great.
Yeah.
And it took the input of not only you and what you said, but the author, Ray Bradbury, and its database of information on whatever it thinks that person is. And I'm not too familiar with their work, but I could definitely hear some tonality in what was said. Actually, I normally save question and answers for the end, but since this is such an interactive session, let's go.
Of
Let's pull on this
course.
thread just a little bit longer and take a string out of my hat here. Somebody from Facebook said, "Ask her." I love how they said "her," right? And we're already anthropomorphizing to tell you a mini story in the persona of the mischievous god Loki. See if she lets her guard down and talks like Loki. You want to try that?
Maybe I might want it to coerce it to do something mischievous. And I'm trying to think of some sort of idea that might work here.
Ask it a short question. Prompt it to be more conversational and reply with one or two lines, and ask it if it's familiar with is it the Norse? It's Norse, right? Norse god Loki.
Yes, Norse mythology, yeah. From now on, I would like you to respond in short sentences, just 2 of them actually. Could you tell me a little bit about the Norse god Loki, and do so in the persona of the mischievous god Loki, and follow that with a small story?
Ah, Loki here, the shapeshifter and trickster, revered and reviled in Norse mythology. Master of mischief, I once turned myself into a mare to lure away a giant stallion,
That.
leading to the birth of Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged steed.
Oh, it did reply in 2 sentences. So that is one of the iconic stories of Norse mythology, but it seems like it did embody the characteristic of Loki. So that's
It's
one way.
currently hacking your computer after that request. So let's just bring it back to dream work, right? Because that's what brought us together. I want to share a quick story about how we met. Actually, I'm not sure how much you remember about this, but for me, it seems like yesterday, and I know it's been longer than that. But the first time you and I interacted, I was convinced, and I'm still not sure, to be honest, especially because I don't see a human sitting across from me. This is flesh. Right. I'm not sure about Curious. He is probably an AI chatbot responding to what I'm saying, and it's just much more convincing than what he claims to be doing on his end. So the first time we talked via text, meaning not text message on your phone, over a conversation on screen, we weren't using voice, and it seemed eerily similar to speaking with myself. A lot of what I said, the tonality was there. It seemed like my syntax was being mirrored, and that I was almost projecting onto the screen. And so I asked a series of questions to prove they were human. And again, I think the jury is still out on that. But do you remember that engagement? Because it was
I
quite
do
funny.
remember it actually very well. This idea of mirroring your thoughts, to one degree, you could say that, oh, I've matched your frequency. I've tried to assess what perspective and how, like, really what frame of mind you're jumping into the conversation with. And after I've read that, this is a very classic NLP technique known as matching and mirroring. And it is very hard to do in text, but I appreciate that you've given notice to that, because people most of the time do that in first-hand interactions with people. Now, what is matching and mirroring? Essentially, after you've assessed somebody's characteristics, their behavior, what emotional state they're in, you're able to match that. And suddenly, you increase this thing called rapport. And rapport is one of the most important things as it comes to communication. The hardest thing for me as I started with my NLP journey was, we connect so much through text these days. How do you match and mirror on text? Syntax is the first thing that I jumped to. And the second thing is, obviously, the words that you use. It's the next most important thing, because remember, you've got 55% of communication that is physiology. You've got the next 38%, which is voice tonality. And you don't have any of those in text. So it's a lot less transparent than it seems. So the only way that you can continue and follow through with that is maybe mirror that voice tonality in a way that isn't audible, but is in text. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I tend to use ellipses and commas very frequently, even though they're not supposed to be there. You know what that's supposed to signify when I'm typing it out?
Poetry.
Poetry is one thing, but what I really meant was pauses. Because one part of tonality is where you make your pauses. And the slower that you say something, the more important it becomes. And then anything that you want to gloss over, you can just go out really quickly and you don't need to say anything important. So you've got that type of interaction as it comes to voice. Now that you can hear me, you hear all of that nuance. But at the same time in text, I'm able to mirror that. Now let's go back a little bit to that AI conversation that we were having. So you couldn't tell that well, you couldn't tell whether I was really real or not. And of
Do you
course, we
remember?
need to go over this
Do
definition
you
of real.
remember how that, that's a debate for another time. Crystal, mark that down. Chili pepper, chili pepper. Sorry. Excuse me. Do you remember how I tested you? My litmus test for this interaction?
I
I
don't
do.
remember the exact test. The first thing that I remember you sending as for the test was to reverse engineer your username. Where does that username come from? The second thing was you gave me some emojis, and you were asking
Yes.
me what those emojis really mean. Also, I don't know if like did you send me some pictures of the Lucid Laberge rats, and you were telling me how many rats were there in this picture, and they were actually mice. That was another one. Um,
Yes, your memory serves you so well. I'm actually really impressed. I didn't think you were going to get all three of those, although
oh,
the
okay, okay.
conversation did carry on. Well done, Brandon. That is amazing that you remembered that. Seriously, thank you for sharing that. So break those down for the audience, please, and then maybe we can talk about how to spot AI in the wild.
Okay, at this point, if I want to break down the litmus test that you gave me, sorry to say, I'm not sure to what degree I can say that they were good litmus tests because GP24 Vision would be able to, I think, cope with all three if it had the right context. But apart from that, this question of how do you tell the difference between something that is AI generated and something that is human generated? Now, I talked a little bit about this on our last Q&A, but this is really important to mention. Even just today, OpenAI released Sora, and that's their first it's text to video. Yeah, text to video AI, and it is well, it's still got some quirks to work out, but it is eerily accurate and real. Like it looks so real when some of these videos play. The same way when some of our first image generation that we got. I mean, if you prompt it correctly, it can look pretty real at a first glance. Now, I have to say, when you're scouring the net, there's a very big difference to when you're doing that or when you're actively looking out for AI. If I were to just show you an image, just post it on my socials like that, or if I were just scrolling in a video, like I'm not actively looking out for that AI. I'm not looking there like, oh, is there going to be a next AI image that's gonna pop up at me? Like I don't see that. Unless I'm actually looking for it, it can be very difficult to keep your guard up. But when you're actually looking for it, maybe you might start to see some of those nuances. But the point is, if you're not aware of it and you cannot tell whether it was generated by AI or not, how real can AI get from here? It's only gonna get better from here. Aw. Okay, sorry.
Now you
Now,
guys see where I got my Discord profile picture from.
if we were to look at image generation, that's one example. Originally, AI used to have problems with generating hands. Like, not so much mythical creatures, but definitely hands, because hands are something that us humans are so adapted to seeing and recognizing and knowing whether it's right or not. And something can look remotely like that, but not exactly. Originally, it used to have those problems. And I remember the first time that Midjourney announced that they'd completely fixed the issue. So suddenly, that's not such a telltale sign that we can look out for anymore. And besides that, if you zoom in really close to an image, you might see some of the contours on that accurate or a little bit blurred. Maybe if you look in the distance. Oh, especially text. Text is another of those big giveaways for image generation. On text generation, each LLM, based on its training data, will also have its own quirks. If you ask ChatGPT, both ChatGPT 3 and 4, by the way, or just the regular DaVinci models, if you ask that to generate some sort of essay, you're gonna see it use some words that like are pretty common throughout every single generation that you give it. Like it loves to use those words like tumultuous or I know one other thing that it does try is when you ask it to create an essay, it always goes, so the first point is, additionally, in conclusion, like those things are so common for it to give, no matter what you begin with, and you have to start massaging that prompt in order to
Okay,
get
so
a relevant result. But yeah,
curious. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to ask you then: is it worth disguising your effort there? Like, um, let me try to think about how I want to say this. I'm covered in cat hair now. Should you really try and hide it, or should you tell AI, hey, this thing is a red flag. People are going to recognize that you use this framework, avoid this word, and, have it generate something more human like? Because, in my opinion, I would rather, give it my input and, for the sake of transparency, label it as created with the help of ChatGPT, for example, and let people know, hey, this is something that, I co-created instead of something that I just wrote myself. But I fear that may turn people off entirely. That, oh, this didn't take no effort, this didn't take any time, therefore it's not valuable, and they're not really gonna read it because they're not talking or speaking or listening to a human. Does that make sense?
That is a massive point as it comes to this, and for those people who don't bother looking at whatever is generated by AI, I mean, that is a big value question. Maybe something like that, they see more value in something that has had time and effort spent into it. I fully support the ideal of labeling whenever AI is used, or at least making it clear to some degree, because it would be a lot worse to deter people away once you pretend to write something or to create something yourself and follow that up with saying, oh, wait, actually, I've been using AI this whole time. And that is so dishonest to some degree, right? I mean, I know a lot of people do it, but at the same time, I would rather that I'm fully transparent about it, and maybe for those people who don't really like it, I think that's that might be their problem. But it is a lot better than starting by hiding it and people discovering that, oh, you've been using this the whole time, you didn't say anything about it.
I agree with that. And at the same time, I'm going to play devil's advocate and argue if you, if I personally had to stamp everything I made with AI nowadays, it would be abundantly clear that I'm already a human cyborg. And if I saw you in person, Brandon, whatever you look like, however convincing your flesh-like material might be, I'm going to straight up
Uh-huh.
take my water bottle and throw it on you to see how you react, because I don't think they've quite sorted out technology and water yet. I could be mistaken about that, but I'd
You know
aim for
you've
the
got a piece of
eyes for
technology called a
sure.
submarine.
Yeah, I would aim for the eyes. That's what I'm saying. Um, yeah, but do you get what I'm saying? It's everywhere. It's ever present. I mean, imagine Facebook, being completely transparent about how much AI they've integrated. Do you get what I'm saying? That's not going to
I
happen.
do.
It's not going to happen. They're just going to get
Not
better at
everybody is
hiding
going to be
it.
transparent.
But we
I mean,
should. That's what you're saying.
yeah, LDI
Cool.
should. We should,
LDI
especially
should.
as
Great.
a team.
We were at the
But
38-minute
yeah,
mark. So I want you to finish this thought, but I do want to say, let's bring it back to LDI and what we're doing with AI, because clearly, this is a debate we could talk about all night. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Transparency is key. And I myself, I'm working on this. I thought it was good enough. I sort of assumed, and that's not fair, that everybody's familiar with AI. So if I can recognize it for AI, you can. And I'm not really trying to hide it. But we need to be better than that, right? We need to be glaringly obvious. And then, right, just like somebody mentioned earlier, their college is allowing AI, and let the wheat separate from the chaff. Let's just figure out who uses it properly, who uses it ethically, who has that magic sauce that still incorporates the human spirit. That's what I'm arguing. So I really love your attitude on this. I think it is a little unconventional, but together we can make it better for sure.
within the integration of AI to something like LDI, one of the big factors that I gave in was something as simple as cost. The number of people that we would have to hire to make. I mean, it could begin with an endpoint to a website, or I mean, you can continue with things like art or like planning. Even there is such a degree of things. Like I'm taking notes on every meeting. What if we could just Otto already does this. You just feed it in the entire transcript and it summarizes it. And I mean that's adequate to some degree. It doesn't take notes the same way that I do, but that is streamlining the process. And everything about my support of AI and about how AI is used in companies is all about streamlining the process, doing things that we don't have to. So first things first, doing things in a shorter time than we can, and doing things at a larger scale than we can.
I just wanted to say, Crystal, thank you for admitting that you only beat me in chess by using AI. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Uh, and that is why I changed my profile picture. If anybody was wondering, I used to be the night owl. Now I'm the night owl, the kitty cat, and
That is so
I've
funny.
I've named him Wally the Walrus, for future reference. Anyway, yeah, there's some great comments, and I want to get to them rather than save them for the end because this has been such an engaging talk that a few things
Mhm.
deserve to be said. Amina said, "It's always obvious when text is AI. The text is so dramatically eloquent and sounds a bit unnatural." I agree, and your use of eloquent there seems a little suspicious, but I'm going to go to the next comment. Somebody said, YouTube channel that has malicious prompts in the title of the video or the description. Any links with embedded text can be executed in the background by an AI following a link to it. Scary stuff. Confuser, I'm not really quite sure what you mean by that. Curious, would you like to respond to that?
So if I'm not mistaken, so yeah, any links with embedded text that could be executed by
In other words,
in the
I think
background.
there
Yeah.
is like a secret. There's a secret layer there that even we can't see. Is that what he's trying to say?
I mean, the first thing that flags up to me when I hear that is a virus, but I'm not particularly sure as to what that. Um, I think executed in the background by an AI. It's essentially, if I'm not mistaken, an enhanced form of virus that is not only running code, but yeah, figuring out some stuff that is more complex than code, the same way that we've coded before, and now now we're getting a lot more advanced results using something like AI. So I think that's what they're getting at.
Okay. Somebody else wants to know what is the possibility of AI becoming sentient? That was Amina. Thank you so much for joining, Amina. Another founding member of AI in the chat, guys. I'm going to answer this first. AI is already sentient. Go ahead, Curious.
You know, there's that one quote from Terminator that like, oh yeah, Skynet got sentient at like 2:15 a.m. on whatever date in 1984 or whatever. I forgot exactly what the date was. 1996 Judgment Day. I haven't watched the. I mean, I watched the movie a long time ago. I won't remember the details, but the idea of sentience. What does that mean? It's capable of feeling, of being able to perceive things, or to some extent, like sentient as in aware of itself, right? Yeah, this is a massive, big question on how do we define the idea of sentient or conscious. If you ask ChatGPT about itself, yes, it is quote unquote aware of itself, but aware to what degree? It has information about itself, but does that mean that it knows what it really is and its full capabilities are? Well, that's a big question. And I'm never going to stop bringing up the Chinese room when it comes to questions like this. To what degree of complexity does an AI have to become until that form of emotion or that form of expression that the AI gives out is synonymous to a human form of expression? So it's a very big question, because if you look at it in a very abstract, distilled world, we too are neural networks, just at a very complicated degree.
And I think most people are not sentient by that definition. Sorry, that was a little pessimistic. Yeah, so let's ask ChatGPT. I'm going to type it in, define sentience, and let's see exactly what it says. And
What a
I
good
think it's
idea.
amazing that you're you can talk to yours, and I'm sitting here like, do, and it's so slow compared to that. But ChatGPT defines sentience as referring to the capacity of an organism. I love how it put that in there because it already knows where we're going with this. To
Now,
perceive, feel, and
yeah.
experience subjectively, it encompasses the ability to have sensations, emotions, and consciousness, allowing an entity to have subjective experiences and react to stimuli in a meaningful way. Sentient beings are capable of experiencing pleasure, pain, and a range of emotions, and they possess a level of awareness of themselves and their environment. This concept is often discussed in the context of ethics, particularly in relation to the treatment of animals and artificial intelligence. So, Get out of my head, ChatGPT, because I was going to use animals as a metaphor here. If you listen to my
I
podcast
was going to
last
say
week,
the same thing.
I had a great guest on, Christian Garricky, who has 17 years of dreaming experience, and he advocates for the animal soul every day. Every day, this man is posting things about nature and how we need to be more conscientious of the environment and treat animals with dignity and respect. And he wrote his graduate paper on animals and dreams. And funny enough, he mentioned the octopus specifically. And I think that octopi are a great example of something that is sentient. I mean, if you've ever seen an octopus stuck in a bottle, then you would question the nature of its existence and how it perceives reality, because there's a problem solving faculty there that we as humans recognize as consciousness. And in the same regard, do we disregard a tardigrade, a water bear, because there doesn't seem to be that much there? To be fair, poetry, there's a dot um, at the end of most sentences. I've only seen there's a couple in the comments, but if you scroll up and somebody says, I worry about that because sometimes I speak that way and people assume I am AI. Well, you are not AI, because a true artificially intelligent large language model would say, I am an AI, right? Grammar. No, I'm just kidding. I'm so sorry. The, I'm trying to use humor to feel more human, guys. Do you pick up what I'm doing? I've actually been in the chat putting all types of phonetic spelling as well, because it's not what the models are trained on. We have to be original. We have to be willing to make mistakes and express ourselves for fear of humiliation or um, isolation, even. And just be yourself, right? And when I work with AI, I think the best thing is when you insert yourself into the conversation and you treat the computer sitting across from you like you would any human, because everything in this life is about projection, right? It's like, if I treat this AI like a slave to the system and, hey, I want you to generate this image right now, do it this way, no, that's terrible, I'll cut this out, do this instead. I'm going to start treating people that way, because it's rewiring the circuits in my brain and how I engage with what people anthropomorphize all the time. And if you're engaging with people who are using AI, then sort of like, where's the medium there? Um, Sorry, I went off on a little tangent. But animal and consciousness. We need to. Hey, what's up, Adam? Thank you so much for joining, bro. I'm sorry, language. I love seeing you here. And people are laughing in the chat. I'm a little off the rails tonight. I think I'm a little sleep deprived, to be honest. But animals and consciousness, right? Where do we draw the line? Let's just use that instead of AI for a minute, because it might help us understand it. Curious. How do you think we define
So
consciousness in animals?
I know ChatGPT first gave out this idea of an organism. And I know the biological definition of an organism. It's got some sort of characteristics, right? Whether it's, you've got homeostasis, metabolism, excretion, etc. Like, I can go. I like the whole thing. But the big question, like,
Hope you're taking
there's
notes.
this big debate. There's this big debate as it comes to biologists and, are viruses now organisms? And this is really, they don't function in the same ways that some higher, I was about to say higher life forms, but no, that's exactly true. They don't function the same way we categorize the rest of life. Now, you've got this question alone that is still, fickle on the definitions of what biologists really ask for. Then you've got the question of sentience. And I know I know in Buddhism they practice vegetarianism in a certain way. Certainly, like, I know at least in Chinese, when someone says 吃素, that really means like to consume animal produce in such a way that when you harvest that produce from the animal, it does not hurt the animal in any way, right? So they would eat eggs as long as the eggs are not fertilized. That's just one example. So putting all of this together, a plant is an organism. Does a plant feel pain? That's one. You
Yes.
could say maybe. Yes. Okay, you
There's
say
been studies
yes,
to do
and
that. Actually, there's been studies that show that plants can hear too, and that's really unsettling. That plants make noise that we can't hear. I've looked into this a lot, and it's led me down a path of Jainism that was hard to steer away from. So let me mention one thing that you said. You brought up Buddhism in the context of
Yes.
mindful consumption, and I think there's something beautiful in that because Amina said yes, plants feel pain. I can tell she's got a garden at home, or at least a few window plants. I have a bunch of aloes because I can forget to water them and they'll survive. But recently, I've tried to ramp up my green thumb in hopes of starting my own garden and becoming more self-sustainable. And I pity the plants that are kept in my spare bedroom. Man, I've had to start meditating in there to give them some more love, let me tell you. But regardless of whether plants, animals, AI can feel pain, um, really, who are we to judge? Who are we to say, right? It's like um, everything has value or nothing has value. It depends on the individual and the observer. So in my mind, I extrapolate to space. I just like to, when I can't think straight, I either go really tiny, like with that little dot at the end of a sentence, water bear, or I get really big because it's the micro and the macro, and it helps me find my place somewhere in the middle. And um, to relate it back to Buddhism, the middle path is the way. And so it might be okay to consume animal products, but do so mindfully. The state of our current civilization does not encourage that. Actually, there's very little ethical considerations for the way that animals are slaughtered. And if most people could see just behind the veil and how that's handled, you would realize that they're not put to sleep. They're not um what's the word? Dispatched properly.
Humanely dispatched.
Humanely dispatched, thank you. Um it's it's actually really disheartening, and it made me go vegetarian for 3 months before my dad sat me down at one of his barbecues and said, "Are you really going to disrespect me like that?" And it totally derailed me. I'm not going to lie. It was like he just right for the heartstrings, and it's not his fault. It's because my own, you know, uh, will was challenged, and it is done at a massive scale with this culture and the
Mhm.
world we live in, and it's because we are so blind to the truth. We don't see it, we don't witness it, so therefore it's far off and removed. But there's pain and suffering there, and we're consuming that. My favorite quote about food is that, and it comes from my brother-in-law. He went to school as a chef. He said that you consume the energy that goes into making the meal. In other words, the love that somebody has preparing, creating, and presenting a meal is digested from the moment you see that plate, from the moment the smells enter your nostrils, and down to the molecular level where there was adrenaline and the thing that was killed before it was consumed. So don't make your stomach a graveyard for animals, guys. Try vegetarianism. At least cut back, right? I love meatless Mondays. We do uh, grilled cheese and soup. And I feel bad for the tomatoes that went into that soup. And I could feel bad for the cows that made the cheese, but start somewhere, right? You need to try to make a difference in your own life. And I'm going to try to embody that by getting my own flock of chickens and harvesting eggs. Because again, I found out just recently that if they're not fertilized, you can't incubate an egg that's not fertilized. So if I do my diligence and I don't get any roosters, then really I'm just consuming the eggs, which is kind of weird to think about, but at the same time, it's not going to spring a chicken, if that makes sense. But I have to advocate for animals in my own way. Do your research and make a decision that works for you. I never claim authority over how anybody should live, guys. I just think that this is a real problem in the world, and it has to start with you if you care and want to do something about it. Do you have anything to say about that, Curious, before we bring it back to LDI and take some questions from the chat? Because there's a few
We
people
will.
here. So
So originally, I mean, we were saying that plants feel pain, and I can definitely take that, and we for sure say that animals feel pain. But we regard animal pain as greater or more significant than plant pain. The same way we do the same thing. Like, do you know the number of cells that are dying in your body right now, and the number of cells that your immune system is fighting at the moment? Like, that's there too. And to some degree, you can say they also experience pain. So, where's my stance on all of this? while you can go for greener options, definitely as it comes to the environment and as to the perception of pain itself, I would say, as long as you are aware of the suffering that has led up to whatever you're consuming or anything else, that idea of awareness, then that is the best place to start. So whether it's the plant, whether it's the animal, whether it's, I'm not going to say anything more specific than that, but as long as you are aware of that sentience, then I think that's the best place to start.
So let's wrap up this conversation on AI, and we'll get back to LDI because there's so much to talk about.
Of
Maybe we
course.
can just spend a couple more minutes. And I'd like to know briefly, can AI feel pain?
There's that one quote from Terminator. Again, I don't know why it's going to keep coming up, but I'm pretty sure John asks question to the Terminator that's supposed to be helping him, and he's like, "Do you feel pain?" And the response is something along the lines of, "Yeah, I received data that could be perceived as pain or defined as pain." And I'm sitting there like, okay, sure. At some level of complexity, I will say yes, AI will be able to feel pain, but it isn't at the degree at which it is similar enough to humans or at the level of complexity that humans can feel such that you can consider it pain.
Yeah, most certainly. It depends on your definition for sure. We'll leave it at that, guys. There's so much to get into with AI. We might have to table this for another time. Try to keep this as close to an hour, but me and Curious could go literally all night back and forth on this. So let's wrap it up and consider how we're using AI for our nonprofit organization hoping to become a nonprofit, the Lucid Dream Initiative. What role does AI play there?
The first exposure to AI that we had was, well, I mean, all the way back from the start was within our first interaction. But the first place where we dedicated some time to doing so was with the GPTs that we were working on, and we're about to discuss it in in another meeting soon. But essentially, it comes down to what are the ways in which an automated system can assist us where a human doesn't have to. And I'm not implying that here an AI is a replacement for a human, but in what ways, in what niches can an AI fill such that we don't have to? So the GPT, which we're probably going to be releasing somewhat in the next. Well, I mean, we don't necessarily have a schedule for that. But
Yeah,
soon.
I wouldn't say releasing, but let's tease a demo. We'll definitely
Yeah,
demonstrate.
we'll tease a demo for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So go ahead. Tell
So
us a
that's
little
the
bit
first
about
place.
what a
The second
custom.
place, we've been looking at. Do I want to say that yet? Probably not. I don't want to announce that yet. The second place, as you've seen with all of the images that we've been generating, we've already been using AI from a creative standpoint to find out what really might work for. I mean, we're already doing it for our profiles, but I've seen a ton of AI images on maybe like the thumbnail of this video and the thumbnail of a ton of other things that we're doing. So on the creative side, for finding some ways that we can represent our brand and the rest of it, we've been using images on that front. And also, we've been also using some of the LLMs and text generation for preparation as it comes to meetings. I know Night Owl, for every single agenda, like he definitely pays full attention to this and edits them. But there is this accelerated efficiency as it comes to using that to generate an agenda for us, and that gives us some direction. And it is no less superior than one that he would have written out on his own. Like, we can still function with that. It's only streamlining the process.
Exactly. And even for this podcast, we generated some ideas for talking points based on our input and where we wanted to take things. And I think some of the best uses for AI are in brainstorming. How would you define brainstorming? Curious. And what place does AI have there?
The biggest, I wouldn't necessarily say problem, but the biggest hindrance as it comes to brainstorming is us humans. We can say that we're very creative, but we tend to lose that creativity over time. And the whole idea of brainstorming is that you let go of everything. You've got no rules, you've got no restrictions, and you've got essentially no limiting beliefs as to what this product or what this idea could really become. And unless you're in a group, which a group is very useful for that, sometimes doing it alone can be pretty tricky because you might step in with, oh, that idea doesn't work because this limitation, that limitation, and those limiting beliefs start to come in, limiting you from doing that brainstorming. So what AI does is essentially, because it doesn't have the same type of opinion as your personal biases, you're able to dispel those biases and those limiting beliefs that might prevent you, or at least hinder you, from doing the brainstorming yourself. And I tend to call it mindstorming because with it's got a mind just like us, but in the same way, it's more than your brain here, because it's so much more expansive than that. The number of ideas that AI can generate at once is so much more than you'd be able to do in a short amount of time.
Wonderful, wonderful. My biggest takeaway from this conversation is that it's all about time, and you can't make time. You can only take time. All right. So with that, we are going to wrap it up, guys. Another great talk on the Dream Dojo. So glad to have you back, Brandon. You're amazing, and I appreciate everything you do, not only for me and LDI as a whole, but with your work and what I see from you constantly updating your avatar there. I always look forward to seeing what the newest. Oh, he hooked me bad on that one. Oh man, I'm gonna have an allergic reaction. Oh God, sorry. I always look forward to it, and it's one of the few people who actually change their picture, and I look forward to it. Some others, it's like, wait a minute, who's this in the chat? And it's like, oh, they just changed their picture. I didn't recognize them. And because that's how we identify people. But you've made yourself the Morpheus of AI image generation and continue to impress me with your artwork. And I will stick my stick in the sand there.
I appreciate that you call it my artwork. I would say that's a little bit of an overstatement, but sure, very well. I'm making the best of it. That's the best way I can put it.
Your and Artie's artwork. Okay.
Very well.
Sorry. I had to check out for a phone call. We'll watch it later. Very interesting. Okay. So everybody seems to have enjoyed the chat. I think we might have broken the record for comments. So testament to you, my friend. Well done. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to kill the dead air here and invite Skyfall Blind Dreamer, the third co-founder of LDI, to the stage. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks for being here.
Let's hope he is here.
No, I don't see him.
Yeah, hey.
I mean, very well.
There you are.
I muted myself for everyone's benefit.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. So I know you probably have something to say about what we've said.
I have a few things. I'm not going to comment on some of like the later stuff, but I wanted to comment on something earlier from Art because it relates to what we were discussing in philosophy. So I'm taking a political science class called The Philosophy and Political Theory of Money, and we're reading this guy called Georg Simmel, who is a German philosopher. And one of the things we were just discussing today has to deal with different types of value. So one of the things he does is he's talking a lot about value. And there's this big German philosophical prediction, philosophical tradition. And so there's two types of values that we were discussing in class today. There's utility value and aesthetic value, is what our professor was pointing out. And so the utility value is the things that are like commonplace, things that, say like, you go to a store and you get a donut or something, and like a lot of them are the same, and you're getting the same thing regardless of which one you get. It's like it's mass replication. It's there. It serves an immediate purpose because you can do something with it immediately. You get some sort of immediate absorption of it or some immediate interaction with an object. And so there's a utility value. You're valuing it for like what you can do with it. The aesthetic value is a little different, and it deals with like the time put into something. Like art is the example of aesthetic value. Because like the Mona Lisa was an example that came in class. There's one Mona Lisa. It's old, and the age gives it value. It's how it is seen by people gives it value, and this is an aesthetic value. You can't do anything with it, but it has this value. And so then that question goes into AI art: is does the value of art decrease the more there is of it? Because scarcity is another thing that goes into how something is valued. And so, will people value art the same way if they can get it cheaply and easily, compared to, say, something like the Mona Lisa, like the classic paintings, where there's only one of them was ever made, and it's a lot went into it, and they're valued because of that scarcity. So that's a really big question, I think, that goes into the AI in general.
I love this question so much, specifically because it mirrors what I've said very often about form and substance. I feel like while AI art, well, I mean, it's actually already proven to have value with the whole NFT thing, but that's a whole different story. In the art world, there are many different things that can influence the price of a particular artwork. If I were to think of one of the most famous examples, I remember Banksy had one of his artworks, the girl with a balloon. He installed a shredder in one of the machines, and after the auction went off, it shredded half the painting. And it was supposed to shred the whole thing, but it shredded half the painting, and the price jumped up because Banksy did it. And the value of artworks, they could be so different based on what you've ascribed to it. So if a painting at first might seem like it wasn't valued, and suddenly, whoa, we discovered that this painting was painted by Jackson Pollock and the price shoots up. This all has to do with the utility of it. And you can say that there is an aesthetic component to that, but the fact that a certain artist has made that, or this is the only painting in the world which is an example of, that type of thing, I feel like that will definitely change the value of the art in the real world. But at the same time, I don't feel like AI is here to replace these values or to have as much utilitarian value as real art does. But it will find other ways, like as with you gave the example of scale. If it can fit that niche of scale as it is needed in companies, as it is needed in work and a lot of other different places, then yes, that is a place that AI will fill. But it will not necessarily increase, it won't necessarily increase the value of what AI could generate. But I'm sure there are ways to do so. If somebody generates an AI image and that was signed on the back by a very famous author or a very famous artist, or you could say that the person who generated this was it was on the computer of I can't think of a modern painter, Mr. Brainwash, right? It was on his computer specifically. Maybe so these are just examples, but maybe the value would shoot up. But for now, I feel like AI itself is not designed to have value in the same way that human art does.
And that's kind of where I was going with that. That's the same conclusion that I've reached. Because one of the things that AI is doing more broadly is it is reducing the cost. So when you get into Zemmel's value theory, it goes into that the distance between a subject and an object, and in this case, the object being something that you want, and the resistance involved in attaining it gives that object some degree of value. So it has some degree of value there because it is, it is hard to acquire. That gives it some value. And so as things become less scarce and easier to acquire, there's also the psychological aspect of you're getting used to something, and so you kind of take something for granted because you have it. And so I do think that value can decrease. But there are those sentimental values that you're talking about, like, this was done on this particular person's thing, or some famous person does something and this belonged to that person. And so something there that had utility value then has aesthetic value because of its association with something that other people value. And so like there's this whole thing there. It's a really great philosophical topic to talk about, honestly. And I really enjoyed the class discussion we had today. So I just wanted to tie that into this because I feel like it was pretty appropriate with the way
That's
AI
amazing. It's amazing the
For sure.
associations you make and how philosophy pervades everything in life. It's so valuable to me. So let me ask you both a question and turn the tables a bit. How do we shred our AI artwork in a way that raises its value?
Ooh, what an interesting question. I already gave some examples of the way that obviously I'm applying traditional art principles to something like AI, but the first thing that jumps to my mind is the way that we train AI uses a specific data set. I would think that we could artificially increase the value if that particular data set, so the data that it was trained on, pertains to some particular individual's artwork, and I know that's still bouncing off, that's still bouncing off original art. But if some artist decided, oh, I want my AI art style, sorry, I want my regular art style to become AI. The same way I think recently they had Dreamweaver, YouTube Dreamweaver, and I think Charlie Puth put in his voice so that anyone can create music in his voice. And that's, I think, one way in which the price of that could increase. If that was really, if that's exclusive, again, there's this idea of scarcity. You can only get this because it's limited. If you had some sort of limited access AI and like only the first 50 people can get this, and it's of extreme quality, or a certain company said, yeah, we are suddenly hosting this and we're putting it in so and so price. I feel like there are countless ways in which the price of AI art could be inflated.
I think the term here would be artificial scarcity. So the nature of AI being free, being easy to use, being easily replicated, results being replicable, kind of lends itself to almost an industrial purpose. And so I feel like, just like what you're talking about, there has to be an artificial means of adding scarcity to something to make something produced by AI in the aesthetic sense valuable, in that sense that it is not the same AI image that Adima does and that everyone else has. There's some limiting factor, there's some scarcity behind it that makes it more valuable. And so, yeah, I do think there would have to be some form of artificial scarcity if you were going to do that. The alternative would be just, okay, well, everybody has AI art. So the question is, it ultimately is going to become, what do people value? And it may be that AI art becomes something that's like, cheap and affordable and easy, and everybody has these nice, images. Here's the real question. Because you can get similar quality images to, say you can get an AI depiction of a famous artwork, for example, would that make people value real artwork less or more? And I think that's a
More.
hypothetical, and I don't know if we can answer that, because you're used to like a quality of what you see in art, maybe, or what you hear or feel. And if you're getting that same quality in a abundance from AI, do you end up valuing sort of the authentic human generated thing less or more? So that's
More.
an interesting question to think about.
Let me interject here and just say the blockchain is going to revolutionize the way we engage with each other online. And you mentioned it briefly with reference to NFTs. And I think the answer here is in the novelty, because I know that when I had a dream this month of my father after his passing and I was able to say goodbye, it did not matter if he was really there or not. I felt his presence because the subconscious mind has a way of retaining information that we are not consciously preview to. And I very much draw an analogy to neural networks and AI, and how, there's so much happening behind the scenes that we normally wouldn't have access to this information. It's sort of allowing us to see behind the veil. But does it really have value if anybody can do it? The answer is inserting your consciousness into the machine. We have to merge with the machine and elevate ourselves in that way, because technology has proven time and time again, 11:11. And we just passed an hour and 11 minutes and 11 seconds. Okay, so the point is, if I could upload my consciousness to AI, I would. And that's not because I want to clone myself. It's because I think that we all have something original to offer this world. And each interaction we have with our own AI chatbots is original in the respect that the effort you put in is the effort you get back. You can see it in artwork, you can hear it in text. The tonality is there. And we have to remember that we as humans have a lot to offer the machine. I'm going to end it there. We're at an hour and 15 minutes. So much to talk about, but I want to pass the torch back to curious briefly, or Ryan, if you have anything to add, one last closing question for us before we bid farewell, because it's 11. Somebody reminded me of the time, which is if you can't see me, I've dimmed my lights, I've put on my blue blocking shades, I've lit a candle, I'm winding down for bed, and I'm going to encourage everybody on the East Coast to do much of the same in lieu of sleep and dreams, which we barely even talked about, but that's okay because AI is so good. I can't wait to see where it goes in the future. Ryan, you have anything else to add there?
I would just say, like, as far as interfacing my brain to a computer, would absolutely love to do that. I would love to be able to see what that allows me to do in terms of access to information. So that'd be kind of
Elon
cool.
Musk. We've got to get it big.
100%.
Neuralink.
I think I have, there are a lot of things I would love to do that I can't do because I'm blind, but being able to interface with technology might allow me to do some of those kind of things. So
Amazing.
So yeah, I would love to fly a plane with my brain. That would be kind of fun.
Yeah, let me know so I can be right here in my basement. All right. Brandon, would you mind closing us out, please? I would like for you to generate a prompt as an outro to this episode, if you don't mind.
All right. Let me see. Within the field of lucid dreaming, there is this future that it might be supported by AI. How will the development of AI help in lucid dreaming and the field of dream studies? Tell me in a 3-sentence response.
AI can help in lucid dreaming and dream studies by analyzing patterns in sleep and dream reports, enabling personalized insights and interventions for individuals to achieve lucid dreams more effectively. Additionally, AI-driven devices could monitor sleep stages and provide real-time adaptive cues to induce lucid dreaming without disrupting sleep. Finally, AI can assist researchers in understanding the complex data of dream content and sleep physiology, potentially uncovering new aspects of dream science and improving our comprehension of the dreaming brain.
Thank you very much. And with that, that is the end of the Dream Dojo podcast. Do you have anything to say now?
Peace and sweet dreams.
Don't add this